Pretty exciting news. ARK Invest, the fund managed by Cathie Wood, has done a new investment, a new position yesterday. And no, unfortunately, it's not new, but it's another company that I am invested in as well. And maybe you remember that in several videos I said that I'm starting a new investment. And so far, I only found the time to announce on my Patreon which company I'm going to invest in. So I hope some of my patrons actually read it and maybe came to the same decision that it is a good investment and also jumped onto the train before it left the station, because yesterday that stock had more than 20% plus in one day. And yes, the stock that I'm talking about is Cloudflare, ticker symbol NET. So what is Cloudflare doing and why do I think it's actually a good investment and why I'm happy that ARK is also starting a position there? So let's take a look at the Patreon post that I made beginning of this month about Cloudflare. So first of all, Cloudflare caught my attention when I was actually looking at what is happening with this so-called Snowflake, ticker symbol SNOW IPO, and that company was, in my views, pretty overvalued, trading at 170 times their sales multiple. Of course, it's a growth company and it's a newly hyped startup, but in my views, it just didn't make sense to do an investment in that. And I was looking to alternatives, and in the end, I found Cloudflare and thought, well, this company looks kind of interesting here because it's at the intersection of a couple of trends that I'm also noticing by looking to China, as well as that they're having a pretty interesting China business here. Because as you know, this channel is mainly about Chinese stocks, actually US listed Chinese companies, but on top of that, companies like, for instance, Tesla, and in this case also Cloudflare, that have a big exposure to the Chinese market, or at least an interesting approach to what is happening in China and could actually benefit from what is happening over there in the market. So first of all, Cloudflare is a software as a service company, and they're offering cloud services that are basically offering, for instance, CDN, edge computing, or as well security related products and services that help you to get your website up and running, secure it, keep it running over different areas on this globe, as well as helping to deploy and scaling the services that your business is offering in the internet. And they're basically saying in their investor presentation here that they are kind of evolving the enterprise stack of the network, the application, and the store compute areas here. So whereas in the past you had those old hardware and software providers, for instance, like Cisco providing the network, Microsoft and SAP providing the applications, and then you have the back end here with Lenovo, HP, Dell, and so on, providing the computing power. Now these days you have those new setup of different services, for instance Cloudflare, which is providing the network, and then you have different applications that are running on top of that. Everything else is moving into the cloud providers like Alibaba Cloud, Amazon, AWS, and Microsoft, and so on. So whereas the old internet was like really based on costly and complex hardware and on-premise and point solutions, now it's getting serverless or getting easy to use, flexible and scalable with this approach. So it's really kind of an upgrade to the new internet. And now that we have the Roni situation, I think lots of services and businesses, for instance, live streaming, gaming, and so on, are really depending on such scalable solutions and this new type of a setup here. And this is why we had like the hyped SNOW IPO and also Fastly, another company in this area that is growing massively in the past. But I think Cloudflare really is kind of under the radar here and hasn't got as much attention in the past. And this is interesting because Cloudflare is a massively growing business. If you look here at their key performance metrics, for instance, the revenues are growing 50% at a compound annual growth rate. Also, the large customers is going up. But in general, what I really like about Cloudflare is that it's targeted more towards like a medium-sized enterprise level. So their customers are not only the really big companies. For instance, the competitors Akamai and Fastly are more focusing on that. Instead, I think Cloudflare really gives like the opportunity to smaller businesses to really leverage the cloud services that they need. And thereby, I think they can tap into a bigger market, which is really attractive here, that they're growing into a prospectus 50 billion, roughly 50 billion US dollars markets by 2022. So a massive market in which they can grow into, boosted by those trends like serverless, Internet of Things, 5G, cellular, and remote work. When I started investing in Cloudflare, they were barely trading at a 37.5 sales multiple here. So not really super cheap, but at the same time, in comparison to their peers, for instance, definitely in comparison to the Snow IPO, they are much cheaper valued still. And besides those positive prospects in terms of the markets and the financials and the product that the company has, I was also really intrigued by the fact that they have an interesting China business here. So I was pointing a blog post out here about how we extend Cloudflare's performance and security into mainland China, which was actually posted by Matthew Prince, one of the co-founders of Cloudflare. And it really shows like how Cloudflare took the time to actually implement a China strategy here. And in my point of view, their China strategy just makes so much sense. And this is why I'm extremely bullish on this company as well. So in their blog, they outlined the challenges, for instance, on the technical side, as well as the economic and the regulatory side. So with my experience of also launching an e-commerce business into China, I know exactly about the challenges of the regulatory framework, also the necessary licenses in China, for instance, to operate a website. And also the server setup is quite difficult. So you need usually a China entity in order to be able to host a website in China and to be 100% compliant. Otherwise, you need to host beyond the Great Firewall, so the firewall that is kind of securing the Internet, and the Internet is obviously divided by Tencent and Alibaba as the bigger players. But if you are in China, sometimes you have really bad performance accessing websites that are overseas. At the same time, if you are overseas, you usually have really slow loading speed if you want to access a site in China. So companies that want to go really global and tap into the opportunities in China, they need a setup that is working both in China as well as overseas. And Cloudflare, they noticed that, and they want to have a solution where they can provide their businesses with a solution that they can actually scale their services also into China, and also Chinese businesses to go overseas likewise. And they noticed that they cannot do this on their own. And this is really important because usually most overseas companies think that they can just go in China and deploy the services that are used to have in also other markets. But usually that doesn't work because of the points that I just outlined regarding regulation, licenses, and also how the Chinese market is different. But Cloudflare was smart enough to partner up with Baidu as well as Jingdong in order to offer their services. So with this setup here, Cloudflare operates all services outside of China and Baidu all services inside of China. And this means that no Cloudflare customer traffic will pass through the China network unless the customer explicitly opts into the service. So this really helps to preserve the customer data, make it really secure, and at the same time, the other way around, they have worked with Baidu to ensure that the personal information is kept with Baidu and is never shared with Cloudflare. So basically, they're running two different systems that are interconnected in order to provide the services, but the particular data of each site is actually staying within the system. And this is once again super important because this is what is necessary to operate compliant in China. And at the same time, we see this right now also happening, for instance, with the TikTok case in which, TikTok may be banned in the US, but the solution now seems to be that TikTok is kind of bought by an American company and then just operated in the US and making sure that the data never leaks back to China. You know, this is kind of the setup already that Cloudflare has already introduced, it seems months ago here. So ultimately, this means that Cloudflare really found a way to do this business here with China. And speaking about security and corporates, yesterday, that was the big news. Cloudflare announced a new service called Cloudflare One, a platform to connect and secure companies and remote teams anywhere on any device. And I think that's the part why yesterday we saw those 20+% jump in the stock price, because this really reflects the need and the necessity in this new world of remote working, boosted by, of course, the COVID-19 regulations that now more and more companies are looking of ways how their teams can from anywhere from home and still access securely the company services. And this is exactly what is needed in this new world of remote working. Once again, and with some of our clients that we're working, this is a big issue between traveling to China and back to Germany, for instance, and having the fear of espionage and stuff like that. If Cloudflare for those companies can actually provide ways to secure the login of their employees and also shielding the company network from attacks and so on, and this working between the different worlds in China and back home here in Europe, this is a big deal. And I think this is why I'm also quite excited about their product, and I think the timing of this company is really perfect now. On the other hand, I'm really new to this investment and I don't want to get too excited about it. I'm just learning. I bought a couple of tranches now, as you can see here. At some points, I even bought at the all-time highs, but still this stock just going up, and also telling my patrons that I noticed how this stock even didn't go really much down when the markets actually had some weaker days. So I'm quite positive about the performance here of the stock so far. And now once again, also ARK Invest coming in yesterday and buying at all-time highs is really a significant trade here, and also supports the opinion that this stock is possibly not fully valued yet and has more room to grow. Also on the product and the business side, Cloudflare is not fully profitable yet, so it's still an early stage company. On the other hand, their balance sheet looks quite good. They have lots of cash and lots of run rate ahead, so no big risks on this side. On the other hand, it will take some time until this company becomes really profitable, although they already have plus 70% gross margins there. For those new services like the Cloudflare One platform now, I think it still takes some time to see whether or not this can really scale on a level that many corporations can actually adopt it and integrate it into their services. Maybe company processes are too complicated or compliance doesn't like the Cloudflare setup. So this may as well flop in the future, but right now I do think that the offering seems to be right in the market and timed well. Another point to watch here, and pointed out by my patron Benson Cole, is that actually that the management has sold off some of their shares and holdings in Cloudflare, and usually that is a bad sign because you want the insiders to hold on to their shares, particularly the co-founders. But I checked it back, and to me it seems like the amount of shares that they've sold is actually quite tiny, so less than 1% actually, for instance, for the co-founder. So I think it's normal actually for them to sell off some shares after IPOing. For me, this is not a really red flag here. So after yesterday's big jump in the share price, obviously Cloudflare is already becoming more mature in terms of valuation, now valued around $17 billion, and maybe the price to sales ratio doesn't look as attractive anymore. However, if you, for instance, take TradingView's price to sales ratio here, which is a forward-looking one, so not based on the current sales that they're having, but looking forward, with 23 price to sales, this still looks like there is some potential for growth in the future. And I'm also looking rather on the big picture here. For instance, with those 7 trends that I have outlined, for instance, in the Audi talk, most of them actually also really depend on cloud services, cloud infrastructure, and a provider like Cloudflare. And at the same time, more Chinese businesses may want to go overseas, reach foreign customers, and thereby they need a player that they are using in their home market, but also that offers the flexibility overseas. And I think Cloudflare may play a role in that. Due to the fact that Cloudflare is growing so fast with more than 50% year-on-year growth rates, I do think that this company can actually continue to grow like that. And then in this case, it may be a nice grower over time. It may not just be as fast growing, for instance, like Neo stock, which was beaten down and then had a lot of catch up to do, but it may be a really solid grower over time, and maybe can go a couple of X-fold over time. So I do think that I will keep on accumulating from here, even though that Cloudflare already is quite a sizable position in my portfolio now. The only thing that I do regret right now is that, of course, I didn't even buy much more before yesterday, and also that I didn't manage to shoot a video on this topic before actually yesterday's spike. Well, if you want to stay really up to date and know first on which stocks I'm going to do as a new investment and see them as potential opportunities that you can also tap into, then make sure to become a patron, because I can just really make quicker posts there than I can actually make videos about it. Anyways, I plan on covering Cloudflare and also their China business in specific in the future, along with those trends that Cloudflare is actually operating. So stay tuned for that, and let me in the comments below what you think about the company and whether or not you also have a position, and maybe if you also want to tap into that in the future. So thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next one.